I'm your host, Jasper Roanhuis, and today I've got Derek from AwakenYaMind as my guest. And we already pre-recorded for a half hour, but I forgot to hit record on the Zoom. So it is on audio, but not on film. And we're gonna talk or continue our talk, but we're jumping into uh, natural law because it's something I've already I also mentioned in my book, which will be coming out hopefully next year, that natural law should be a focus of us, and I think we're still digging the surface on like what natural laws are. Some are discovered, like you could say gravity is a natural law. I know about the Hermetic Principles. We can talk about that as well, the different laws of that. But in my book, I've mentioned that laws are not the same as facts. And you're a little bit triggered by this, but I adjusted it a little bit. But the thing about natural laws, I would say, is that they are they don't have to be proven. There could be laws right now operating and we don't know anything about it, so we wouldn't state it as facts. But they are there. How are you familiar with the Hermetic Principles? I know that you made a mix on these Hermetic Principles. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this for people that don't know what they are.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, there are 7 Hermetic Principles, hermetically sealed, all that stuff. I mean, this just came from the dawn of creation. It's nothing that humans invented. Yeah, you mentioned laws, like it's just inherent in nature. It's not, it's they're there. It's a science. It's, the observation of everything, cause and effect. All right, so let's just go into the 7 principles, because the first one is mentalism, because everything is brought forth by the mental mind. In biblical terms, it says and God spoke the first word into his existence, Word had to come from mind. Word is vibration, which is another principle. Vibration and rhythm, polarity, gender, cause and effect, and the law of correspondence. As above, so below. As the universe, so the soul.
Yeah.
So
as within, so without, they also say, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a pretty good movie called As Above, So Below. It was about the Paris catacombs. So I went there in my beginning of my travel here in France. So and they're pretty big, the catacombs, but they explain it pretty decently in this movie, the As Above, So Below principle. I don't want to spoil the movie for people who haven't seen it, but it just visualizes that especially the last principle. But I think they explain like more of them. I wanted to teach that those laws to children, but they still think that some of them are still too difficult. I did touch upon like mentalism to the children, but most of these are not most. I think 3 of them are like based upon dualism, but they're expressed in different forms. Like cause and effect is actually like a dual side. Then you have law of polarity, which is also a dual side, and then you have the law of gender. But their expressions are different, but they're based upon, I would say, like the same principle in the fact that they're like dualistic. And now
there's 2 sides.
Yeah. So like right now I'm here in south of France, in Toulouse, and in history you had the Cathars here in this region. They were pretty big, and they considered themselves as dualists as well. They had this belief that that the world was dual. You had the evil god, and with the archons, the demiurge and the archons, and then you had the Sophia, the real God that is within us. And I think, like, Hermeticism, it comes from Egypt, um, originally, or maybe even older. But they both share the same belief system, in the sense that, they have this belief that everything in the universe is dual, but you have to see the dual side first, and then you can discern, like, okay, this God, where Christians pray to. And I have a lot of discussions, and I will be having a discussion with a friend who's like a Catholic, and he has another view on the Gnosticism than I have. But the dualism is certainly like something very interesting, because it's very different on how we approach the dualism here, with good and bad. We associate with that. But in the Eastern religions, we have more the yin yang, and where they see that we need both sides, more like a balance. So what are your thoughts on this? Like, did you do some research on the Gnostic view? Are you familiar with that?
I've listened to some things. Yeah, I was feeling the Gnostics a good amount. Yeah, I can't really say much about it, to be honest. But
Okay.
Yeah, they had a good Sophia hypothesis, and yeah, obviously they talk about the archons and
Yeah. Well,
all
a
that
lot of
stuff.
people, you're also a conspiracy thinker, just like I was, or I am. Um, a lot of conspiracy people, they start with, like, okay, all this is in our society, we have a lot of corruption and a lot of manipulation. But then they stumble upon, like, okay, the holographic universe, watching the Matrix movie, and they eventually that's the thread that I follow. But eventually I stumbled upon the Gnostics, and the Gnostics, they have this belief within reality itself, like that it's the archons, they created this illusion for us, together with God, where they see the material world as something negative and something that is trapping us. And so a lot of people, they, from the conspiracy view, already are very attuned to this, maybe not in reality itself, but in how society functions. So it is not that a big of a jump in that sense. But there's still, like, some steps to make for a lot of people to really get that, because we got conditioned, and we are more aware with our Catholic and our scientific views, and a lot of these are missed out. But what is your feel like? Yeah, you already mentioned something about on our pre-recording. I think we'll put this the pre-recording. I'll just tie it in, somehow figure it out. But
Yeah, cool.
yeah, you talked
Yeah, no
about
worries.
the some holographic or some illusion aspect. So with the thought, maybe you can, like, give a
Yeah,
further
like going back
explanation.
to, you were talking about duality and stuff, and what I think people are over dualizing too many aspects of life, I think sometimes, and especially with people that are going along the lines of conspiratorial or spirituality things, and especially in the New Age movement, people are kind of like, I wouldn't say, yeah, can't think of a good word for it, but just kind of, I guess, dismissing the material world for the more spiritual aspects of life and consciousness and stuff. And we're born here in the 3D physical realm for a goddamn reason. And if you do not spend your time here trying to master this realm, this material realm, and and bridge the gap of the spiritual, into your being here on Earth, you know, anything to the contrary just seems like especially in their trajectory, just seems to be a form of spiritual bypassing, you know?
Mm, mm.
So,
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of like manipulation within the New Age movement. I think you're like also aware of this fact,
yeah.
there's a lot of like historical traditions like the Gnostics, and what I like to do is to visit these places and learn from the people that were most close to it, even though like they're extinct. But when I went to Minerva, I had this like very strong feeling came through me of
Oh,
this
wow.
energetic state of like something they would call agnostic experience, like that there's more going on. It's not like you already mentioned the vibrational experience that you had. I think that will be a much more deeper
Yeah,
because
and I didn't even finish that, but yeah.
yeah, maybe you can explain that a little bit more or talk about that. I've also mentioned that I had a similar experience with being in a vibrational
Oh.
state, and I saw this pattern,
Mm-hmm.
this on my necklace.
Yeah, yes. Word.
So yeah,
Nice, man.
so these are the spirals that we're, it's also tied in with the Fibonacci and
Mm.
lots of different stuff, and the different frequencies and how this like ties into our reality and how it unfolds. Frequencies change; they don't stay the same. They vibrate, and they can vibrate at different
Mm-hmm.
levels. So, what was your
Yeah.
experience with it?
My experience was a little traumatic almost. Not like, wouldn't say traumatic, but along the lines of it, where yeah, I was shook into my core. Basically, I was listening to some things, meditating on other stuff, like just on a global scale, and like really trying to feel into this earth, and you know, going over the eons of what she's endured, and all this stuff, and I had such a profound sadness, and I wept for a good like half an hour. And half of that weeping, it was almost like a hyperventilating at the same time,
Mm.
and I couldn't control it. It wasn't some kind of seizure, or I don't know. Someone said I was trying to explain it to one of my friends, and he said some bogus scientific term. Hey, that's not what it was. I was literally like shifting frequencies within my whole body, and that lasted a good 15 minutes. And since that point in time, I've never been the same in my life. Just
Mm.
having more mental clarity. It's like something activated within me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's the kind of profound resonance that I had in that experience. And since that time, I was like, okay, I'm kind of awake, but I really need to understand what the hell is going on. Like, I didn't even know. I wasn't well versed on a lot of stuff that I am now. And like, I was wondering, was this some kind of, alien tech? Was I zapped by the universe? What happened really, And
Mm.
yeah, it kind of led me to more questions than answers.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's
But
supposed to be
yeah.
like having these questions. They are very important. Instead of like saying
Hmm.
this is that and that is that, like pointing our fingers towards it, but not really understanding what it really means. I think like a lot of that is still unfolding into during life. How long this
Hmm.
was this experience? Like when was this?
It was right on time, brother.
As it always is.
2012.
Oh yeah, 2012. Yeah.
2012. Really kind of getting into the whole like, oh, the Mayan calendar. Are we going to make it to Ascension? What about Armageddon and the apocalypse? Even though apocalypse just means like a revealing of something, it doesn't mean some kind of end times biblical catastrophe type of situation.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Apo and calypso means to reveal from what's hidden.
Mm.
We're living in post-apocalyptic times right now because the truth has been revealed to us. If people haven't gotten on that vibe, then they really need to kind of get into gear and make that shift because we are drowning in information. So
Yeah,
of course
yeah.
there's plenty of bad information. Of course the controllers and know about this, and that's why things are so flooded, gaslighted, control opposition, and then some, that in the kitchen sink thrown into the mix, so that's why being very discernful and really tuning in to your heart based intelligence, and really aligning to your true intuition, because there is kind of like the shadow intuition, kind of like the shadow ego, where you can't really trust it, you know what I mean? You really got
Mm.
to make that distinction. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
but yeah, the thing is, but there's so much information on the internet. Like people don't really have a way in which they or learn through their schooling system how
too
to
much.
discern between all this information. So how did you like?
Well, yeah, natural
How did
law's
you?
not taught in school,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but you can validate natural laws by just living your life and applying these principles. And also, if you know that the principles are, you can like pick them out and see, all right, this is how that works. But a lot of these things like Anunnaki, and you mentioned about the ancient aliens, well, I think there's some of things like that can be validated if you visit those places yourself. But a lot of things there are not validatable, and we don't have an epistemological system taught to us where we learn how to discern. And I think, like you said, mentioned the heart-based intelligence, or the heart and the brain and the gut connection is a key, and
Totally.
also
Yes.
having the right attitude
Sure. Yeah.
to really discern between all this so vastness of information. So how did you figure all this stuff out? Did you get any help or?
I don't have it all figured out, but I feel like I stand on the shoulders of giants, people that have spent, dedicated more than half their life or their whole life towards, these types of things. And yeah, people out there listening really need to understand that people like me and even you, I've noticed, the majority of our free time is going towards, taking in information, learning and discerning and meditating as well. Because yeah, you mentioned, the heart, mind, guts connection, and really trying to master your own thoughts and your own emotions, which will determine your actions, which you are more control of. If you're not in control of your mind, someone else is going to be in control of your mind. That's just, a fundamental fact of this reality, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I think
lost
like
train
it's
of thought. Help
important.
me.
I think it's important to being able to what you learn to pass it on towards others. Like there's so much, so much vastness on the internet, and none of it, all of it, I think should be shared more, put more attention to, because of the relevance is not very high. But there's other things like your own
Exactly.
experiences or things that are valuable that should be passed on. So like what are some things that you
Mm-hmm.
think like that you researched that is crucial for people to know? You're sharing a lot of your teachings through your mixes, I would say. Um, because also you mentioned earlier about the oral traditions, how people passed on their knowledge through rhyming certain sentences and memorizing vast collections of information
Ah,
through that. I
yeah.
think like I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I think hip hop could be intended in the same way, in which we could teach all these things and memorize them really well, because that's how I use your and how I listen to your mixes. They really
Mm-hmm.
help me to
That's
learn and
cool,
to
man.
memorize all that information that are already gathering through documentaries and books and other stuff, conversations. But they mostly stick the best way through rhyming. Um,
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. Music has that magic over us. us in that regard. And yeah, just words are spells, and what we cast out, we should be very mindful of what those are, which is, you know, going back to teaching. I want to make sure that my shit is really legit before I go out to in publicly broadcast, you know, what I'm speaking on, because I really want to hold myself to high standards and accountability towards, you know, what I'm presenting, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Continue.
you're saying something about, you know, how do we distinguish between, you know, good and bad information and all that stuff. And people really need to come back to self and stay within the fulcrum of their inner gnosis, because when that is ignited and activated, you are going to be able to discern things at a higher level than you've never been able to do before. And pretty much we know the answers deep within us already. It's all about remembering these things. And this goes, you know, all the way back to our ancient pasts, you know, past lives, you know, ancient ancestry, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so what we're going to learn, which resonates with us, it's almost just like a confirmation of things that we've already known, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's that is something that if you like research something and it hits you in your spirit, like already, you cannot put your finger on it, but it's almost like you've heard it before, even though you didn't. Uh,
Yeah,
it's like a deja vu.
Or you just listen to something for the first time and you're just kind of nodding along and like, yes, yeah, man. He's yeah, kind of,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I yeah, there's like so much things that are very interesting that we could talk about, but you know, like for this podcast, for example, I have to make a selection in where like what things do I want to touch upon. So the previous podcast I did about the Andean cosmovision because it's almost dying, and I think and the guy that I invited on, he's reconnecting back to his ancestry, and that is something that I'm doing as well, reconnecting with my ancestry of I've done in the past through
great, man.
different
Yeah.
pilgrimages, and yeah, just learning about my own tradition. But like the thing about hip hop is it's a more modern culture. It's not really a very old tradition, and if people say it is an old tradition, they tie it back to Africa, and like we're white, so we cannot say like it's part of our ancestry. So I think like modern cultures, they're usable as well, but I think it's an interesting combination, just the hip hop and the spirituality. Like our own traditions, we need to tie back to for spiritual reasons, for getting the roots that we need in order to grow in our spirituality, knowing our own past. But the hip hop itself, it's a I don't know, it's a very beautiful hip hop tool, teaching tool, but it also gets a lot of like identification with like blood, or I mean with skin color, and I would say those are like trivial and not very important. I think like hip hop should and is representing something universal, and that's what you're using, and that's what I listen to, and I don't care if you're white or black or what color you are. It's more like what is your message and how are you using hip hop, because hip hop means also hip, and hop is like hip is the relevance or the knowledge, and the hop is the movement, just like Keras once said. So what do you think? Like, is it
think,
important? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No,
is it important to reconnect with your ancestry, and what are your thoughts about the hip hop and its spiritual connection? Like, because also with the org tradition, and maybe you know something, because I am not from that generation. You probably was brought up with listening to hip hop, like you already mentioned, but I stepped in pretty lately, and so I know from my own research that hip hop has a lot of ties with consciousness and raising awareness,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of hip hop is used like that, and not all hip hoppers are considering themselves spiritual or anything. So,
Yeah, of
what do you
course. There's
think?
all types of flavors, and I feel like the basis of hip hop had several things. Just freedom of expression. They wanted to have the neighborhoods dancing in the streets, like in Bronx with Cool Herc and all that good vibe stuff, and the house parties and this and that. And when there is more lyricism implemented into the music, then yeah, there seemed to be more messages being portrayed with Eric B. Rakim, Pete Rock, CL Smooth, KRS-One, of course, And then, not every message is going to be conscious, there's Too Short and,
Yeah.
cats of that nature as well. But for me, I guess this might be a romantic view of hip hop, but I always look at it as, what really set it off for me is kind of just an oppressed culture, or, a group of people, or race. I mean, you could just say the human race is just one race, but yes, the African American people, to be more specific, being oppressed. In the 80s, there's the fucking CIA crack pipe demolition of fucking communities destroyed, and a lot of people weren't taking that shit. The Black Panthers were, still alive, I believe.
Mm.
And to kind of speak their messages a little bit more discreetly, they put it through music, and they used a lot of ebonics, and they kind of encrypted what they're trying to say, so that the police or government doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, But
Yeah.
obviously these things, they have their good run of things, and then it just kind of gets compromised and taken over, perverted, inverted, and that's what we have today. Anything commercial, I don't know. I haven't paid attention in the past like 2 decades or something.
Yeah, it's getting worse and
It's
worse.
unavoidable a good amount, but yeah, it's just yeah, if you're going shopping, or you're with a friend and they turn the radio on, yeah, of course you're gonna hear it. But otherwise, I'm on hermit mode with all that stuff.
Yeah, I get it.
For me, that's kind of like the apple in my eye in regards to hip hop. It was more rebel music, I guess. Like fuck the system type of shit. With
Yeah.
Public Enemy, yeah, of course, Public Enemy. I want to say from the get go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good times, I guess. And yeah, like if we can like change the topic, like to spirituality, and to the corruption of the New Age movement. I think like a lot of these traditions, or should I call them traditions? I don't know, but they are so modernized because they draw upon a lot of Eastern religions, and they apply it into a Western thinking. A lot of these people are Westerns, and they adopt all these thinkings. And I think the same thing happens with hip hop as well. Like a lot of people, they are not really born in that culture, but they like grab it and use it for the wrong purposes. And I think that's something that is happening with the hip hop right now. Like they don't really study the real history of the tradition, how hip hop started with the Public Enemy, and how it consciously began. The same thing with the New Age, like they draw upon like some Eastern philosophies, and I have nothing against that you study that and go to those countries. but we have here in the West a lot of traditions, spiritual traditions as well. And one of my traditions is the Frisian tradition. It's not a lot of things known about that, besides a few manuscripts, which is highly debatable if that is a valuable source. And there's like the Hunebedden, so there's some places you can visit. But overall, like there's like alchemy, for example, is a Western tradition. It's kind of in the middle. It's not West, I guess. But there's also
Well,
sorry.
Al-Chem, it came from Egypt,
Yes,
right?
yeah. But there's also the Western idealism with Hegel and Goethe, or some other, who else? Whatever, a few more.
Descartes.
Yes, Descartes. So that is also a part of like this. They were also interested in spirituality, but in tying together with our way of Western thinking, in which we don't have to discard the ego, but we transmuted it. I think Carl Gustav Jung is also a very big influence on the Western
Ooh, yeah.
spirituality. Do you know something about this? Like, what would be some streams that people are not so familiar with that had its roots in the West, like the Norse mythology, for example, maybe? Or
Oh, yeah.
you studied in this?
I'm not too well read or listened with the mythology, either Norse or Greek or Roman, I guess. Although, yeah, things do ring bells for sure, and I do understand some archetypes and things, but yeah, there's traditional occult mystery schools or just philosophies like Thelema, which Madame Blavatsky, I don't know if she founded that or what, but and I don't know if wasn't that what Aleister Crowley was also involved in? Thelema as well?
Alice Crowley, yeah. He was the founder, I think, of Thelema.
And then there's the Rosicrucian.
Yeah.
You know, but they have their philosophies, but they kind of fall into the conspiracy theorists just want to label them as a secret society and all that. But you know, there's some great philosophical teachings in a lot of these mystery traditions. You know, a lot of them have been co-opted. You know.
What is co-opt for people that are not familiar with that word?
Co-opted is like whatever dark forces or elites that you want to consider. They're gonna take whatever is good and infiltrate it and kind of twist some of their doctrines and meanings and philosophies.
So this would be more like the dark side of the occult, just as dark as my surroundings. I need to put on some lights, by the way, but if you just have should we take a 10-minute break? I don't know. It's unfortunate that we don't have a timer. Yeah, we'll take like 5-minute, 10-minute break.
Okay, I'm gonna go inside. It's cold.
yeah, I see it. Okay. All right, welcome back, everyone. I guess this is kind of like the second part or the third part because I have to edit them together. But thank you for still watching and for staying with us. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I put on some lights here, so I'm better seen now. That is lights are an interesting thing. Just reading a book about The Secret of Light by Walter Russell.
Nice, yeah.
So yeah, that's certainly something. I forgot what you said with the suggestion.
Oh no, it's all good.
Maybe like what do you think about light and darkness? Goethe, I don't know if you're familiar with Goethe. He had a theory on the ladder and the aspect between light, know the difference between light and darkness, because in our common mainstream view upon light, it's darkness is the absence of light. That's what they
Yeah.
say. So they're saying like there's only light. But Goethe said something different. He said that darkness stood equal to light, and that they like need each other. So all these color spectrums that you see around me, like all these maps and stuff, they
Mm-hmm.
are the balance in between darkness and light coming together, and they create these color spectrum. So if you
Yeah.
say that they're only light, then you would have this lamp like intensifying, and you couldn't see. You were just be blinded.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you're looking
Mm.
directly into the sun. You cannot see
Yeah,
any
yeah, yeah.
differences. So you need both of them. So
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on lights? Like it's such a within quantum mechanics that they with these particles and so many different angles to it, and it is something it's I probably one of the most important subjects, light, because that's what we capture. uh,
Yeah.
what do you think?
And what we perceive through our lens. And yeah, I'm feeling the darkness, or the absence of light in regards to darkness. It's kind of like it hinges on the principle of polarity. But yeah, I feel like, yeah, but without that polarity, there wouldn't be those degrees in between that represent that spectrum of different colors of light, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's
Well,
interesting.
sorry.
Green is the middle of that spectrum.
Hmm.
It's also
Yeah.
the middle chakra, which is represented by green as well.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting,
Heart
because
chakra.
nature and
Yeah.
green association as well, being perfectly
Hmm.
balanced. Maybe there's a
Yeah. And I
connection
have a
there
friend
as well.
that grows that started growing weed and stuff, and he was telling me about all these different light fixtures and how to grow them under certain lights. And he could say that he could grow a plant normally with just like the red and blue spectrum, because the plant is already green, so it doesn't need to take in that green light apparently. So yeah, I thought that stuff was pretty interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, well, something else that
Yeah.
Curtis says is that we have a personal relationship with colors. So colors is not like Newton
Mm.
said, like this, we see it, but we don't really experience it on our like heart level, emotionally. But what Goethe said, and Rudolf Steiner, I don't know if you're familiar with Rudolf Steiner, he taught a lot
A
from
little
his
bit.
philosophy. But he said that it's all participatory. So if we observe something, we're not really, if we're seeing it from the outside, then we're still not really getting it. So if we have this, we see like my headphone is red. If I see red, then the common association with red would be alertness or passion or
Yeah. Hmm.
desire, or also hot and warmth, and a lot of like stop signs are always in red. The things that we have to put most attention to are red. Our
Yeah,
lips are a
that's
little
base
bit red.
level chakra. Yeah.
Root check, yeah, her sweater. So
Yeah,
red.
and it stems to the, I guess, animal instinct, reptilian part of the brain as well.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it,
But
with the whole stop sign being red and all that stuff, those things are not just by accident, or coincidence.
yeah, for sure.
And a lot of the news channels, they're going to be red and blue,
Hmm.
which really just pays on like a red meaning like alert, pay attention to this, and the blue kind of, I want to say, being more like the feminine aspect and emotionally, and kind of playing on that duality within the psyche of people that that watch the news.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's funny that their intro to the news, it's like all these shapes and geometry things coming in, and it unfolds into like Fox News, or it's some whatever.
yeah.
And yeah, that's just another brain overload tactic to get people to, I guess, be interested, pay attention, you know.
Yeah, to draw them into their
Mhm.
way of seeing. Yeah, that you can manipulate people through like using colors. Hey, you see some restaurants like McDonald's used to have like a red and yellow sign, and they still use it a little bit, but they also changed into green and brown, so it has
Yeah,
more of
great.
a like natural look to it. So people think, oh, it's more like biological food, even though like they probably didn't change that side of to
Yeah, that's called greenwashing.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think they're smart.
Mm. Yeah, and I think like a lot of artists know about the colors and how they react to our psyche.
Hmm.
I have a painting at home about the seven chakras are in there as well, but you can see the artist starts with green, with like the earth symbolizing the earth, and then it goes up, and they have the humans, which are more like the yellow, like light essence, and then up top you have the purple, and the purple is more
Mm.
associated with the mysticism. uh, i
Yeah,
went
yeah, cool.
I went to a hunebed in Drenthe, in my country,
Mm.
on a bicycle. What's about like 70 or 80 kilometers from
Damn,
my
man.
city. Yeah, yeah. So it was quite a journey. Did it with two friends.
You think?
But
Sweet.
there's like Netherlands is completely, for a few exceptions. There's some hills there somewhere, but on that place where we were, there was just one hill, and this hill that was like because of the ice that was melted underneath for thousands of millions of years, it was risen a little bit, and there was these
Oh yeah.
flowers
Huh.
on top, and these flowers, they
Oh
had the
wow.
purple color, and they hold
Mm.
the heat as well, of the sun.
Ah.
So it felt like you're in a tropical country, you're in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And the
Mm.
ancients, they recognized the sacredness of this place, so they built the hunebeds close, not on top, which is another like interesting thing why they didn't build on top, but they built next to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And
Mm.
there were these burial mounds like from an earlier age, from the Bronze
Mm.
age, and so they recognized um, this hill as a something sacred, and also the association with purple, like some mystical vibe that you have there,
Mm.
uh, and it just makes you think like did they know that they that purple was associated with it, or these things are still at first still unconscious, and that we get influenced by it but we cannot articulate it, and then like now at these ages where we become more and more aware of how our psyche functions, that we really can say like, okay, this is how it affects us. And what do you think, like, um, did they knew about these colors and how they worked upon their psyche?
Yeah, I feel, and yeah, at the same time, people have their own interpretations. A lot of them aren't necessarily wrong or right in certain regards, I feel, but I feel like when people are hitting on the certain frequency of these colors, they're really tapping into something pretty synchromistic, if you will,
Mm,
sacred, you know?
mm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a certain book. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Oh yeah, I've mentioned when I was at your place. It's called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, and it talks about our evolution of consciousness. How our we have these two hemispheres on our brain, and
Mm.
that one hemisphere, which is the right brain, uh, is was more activated in our history before like the Greek era, and so we got these voices which we called the gods, depending on the religion that we were in, but they told us to do a lot of things, but we didn't have our ego consciousness, so we didn't have our own desires yet. So we heard these voices and they had supreme authority. We say, okay, we should do this, we
Yeah.
should do that. So maybe, I don't know, with this hunebed and stuff, like how did they build all those things? How did they choose the locations? did they get these voices that told them these things? Like in our times, we would call it schizophrenia. But for them, it was like a sacred state to be in. And like now, right now, we're more in our left brain, and we can articulate all these things. And through that, maybe also the effects as well, because we get more conscious on it. But I think they were like into a primal. I think the most primal state to be in is just pure frequencies, and you probably see colors, but I that's what I saw when I did the Buffo Alvarius. I saw all these colors and all these spirals and these squared spirals tying in together, and all these different frequencies. So I think that colors go very deeply into the psyche. But a layer on top of that is the gods, and you know, there's also the archetypes. You're familiar with archetypes, I'm sure, and with the colors of their archetypes, and the different gods ruling different archetypes, and the different planets. And there's seven colors, seven. Well, they used to think there were seven planets, and they associated
7 heavenly bodies, right? That we can see with the naked eye, kind of.
Yeah.
Including the moon and the sun,
Yeah.
Which is why we have the 7 days of the week. You know, every single day represents one of those, moon, planet, sun.
Yeah. And Friday is Freya, the goddess Freya, which is connected to Venus. But the Frisians call themselves the children of, well, not all Frisians right now, but according to the Urlinda, we are the children of Freya. And Freya is also where we get our word Freya, vrij. In Dutch it says vrijheid, so vrij, freedom. And so in this book they say that the Frisians had the conception of Freya, of the vrijheid, of the freedom, that we like our this concept is very well known in our democracy, and a lot of our especially mine, like my philosophy and my drivenness to philosophy was primarily also out of freedom. I wanted to be free. I don't want someone to tell me you should do this, you should do that. No, I want to decide for myself. So that was a main, very big reason for me to become so and very dedicated into the spirituality, into conspiracy theories, because there's so many people saying what you need to do. But in ancient times, you had these gods, and they said you should do this, you should do that. So we already talked earlier about natural laws, which is also a form of authority, and that is something you do have to listen to. But it's freedom is a kind of new thing, and it's part of our ego to be free, but not free. And the good form of freedom wouldn't be just free from natural law, but just
here's
free
the
on our
thing.
expression.
We're not free from negative consequence if we're going to do something negative. That's just a law of nature and the principle of cause and effect, for example, So we're free to do anything we like, for sure, but not without consequence, if you will.
Yeah.
So that right there should be the underlying, motivating thing for people to kind of realize, like, hey, I shouldn't. It goes back to the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. And I know there's a better way in saying that, but that's more directly, not so subjective, if you will.
And my
natural law. Sorry.
No, you can continue if you
want. Just natural law, if you will, can kind of get boiled down to just a simple phrase in do no harm, but take no shit.
Yeah.
If everyone lived by that, we'd have a more sovereign society, I think. Because the law of morality is kind of the more moral a society gets, the more freedom there is within it.
Yeah, but if you look into nature, I wouldn't say that there's any morality there. They just is as they are. They it's also a human concept, wouldn't you say? Like morality, to how to treat.
Well, we can't teach natural law to even animals. They're running on instinct. It's more for natural law governs the consequences of behaviors of people with a high enough consciousness to understand, those basic things pretty much.
Mm.
And I know that sounds a little convoluted, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Natural law, it is a science. We can study these things. I got my cat right here. I've been telling him about natural law for all these years, man. He just still goes off of instinct. What can I say?
Yeah. Humans are a strange thing in that perspective.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
that we have this, that we can have a view on natural law, and that we can follow them, and that we can explore them, and we can see in different dimensions. And my hair cutter used to say, it's very strange that I have a hair cutter that is like very philosophic, but I used to have one.
That's cool.
Yeah, and he always said like free will doesn't exist, because if you're free, free will, if you want something, then you already aren't free, because you're attached to this will that you have. Like, I want to have this, and that limits your own freedom. So I always had these.
I see what it means with that.
Yeah, like it's true what he says, but it doesn't mean that freedom doesn't exist. It just means that free will doesn't exist.
No, I think free will definitely exists. I don't think he understands the full term of free will, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
we have a free will to choice. I mean, people are programmed upon programming and programming all the way to our DNA, and the fact that most of our DNA is deactivated. So, yeah, there's certain desires that that are more like impulsive, that kind of stem from the negative shadow ego side, for sure. And people are programmed to want and do and decide and make choices for certain things, for sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, people do have the free will choice to go about what they want to do, what they think about. Obviously, we live in a kind of, let's say, closed society, but yeah, we're kind of limited to what we can do.
But he means it as like on a deeper level, because how he explains it is through a sorry.
Sorry, I'm going at a deeper level too, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's not like to because I can see both perspectives, but the way he explains it is through a story with like these sharks, and there's like a type of shark, and they have this fish attached to the shark, and the shark is like just riding along with this, and this fish is riding along with this shark, and doesn't have to do anything, it just floats with him. But he would say that if you say that you can make your own choices, you are this fish attaching to the shark, that you are saying, yeah, I'm doing all the work here, I'm saying left, I'm saying right, I'm saying forward, but it's actually the shark just making the decisions. But yeah, for me, like, free will, I get it because of the term itself. If you're free and you have a will, who doesn't say that? If you made this will on your own, it's very difficult, because we're all these words that we're surrounded with, and all these people that influence us, even though we're not very aware of it. So how can we say that we're completely free in our wills? Like, how much got influenced by others? But on the other hand, like, freedom does exist, because it's it's in state of itself. Like, if I'm free, if I have the freedom, then I have also that's a paradox. You have a responsibility. You are not completely free. You are, you get this power and you can abuse this power, and a lot of these secret societies abuse this power. But within the freedom, you can create all these potentials. You can make art. You can make things, what people would say, like superhuman abilities. I've shown you, like Wim Hof, or some other people. They use their freedom, which is like you're in a state in where you're not really a slave to yourself. You're not, and you have a lot of like these problems you got resolved. So you're in a state in where like you can, explore your own freedom. You can see what are my capabilities, what are the things, talents that I possess, and how can I use this to to share it with others.
Yeah, make it a positive impact on the world for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to have free energy and
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
that good stuff as well. Yeah.
And that's the
Um,
vision that Nikola Tesla had. And Victor Schauberger, which I mentioned earlier, also wanted to do something similar with zero point energy, which was based upon
yeah.
implosion instead of explosion. I think
Mm.
we'll go towards that. Oh yeah, now I remember what your suggestion was. It was about the transhumanism and our
Oh yeah.
the technology, because that is something that will be pushed upon like us in the next coming years, especially now with this corona. A lot of things will
Like it
become more
hasn't already.
digitalized. Oh yeah, I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus, but more the technology that will grow upon it, out of it, you know, and people will use more tablets, more like computers, and maybe we'll become into a society where we're stuck in our homes, and everything that we needed to do outside, we got drones for, we got, you know, all this technology, maybe AI, 5G, self-driving cars, or you name it.
Yeah.
I don't hope that they will limit our freedom in that we can travel. Yeah, we used to live in a world. I'm still, that's why I'm
Ah,
traveling to France and later to Portugal. I hope to reach there. I'm still
yeah.
doing it now because now it's still, you can still do it, but you know, to say like we're living later in a society where everything has to be monitored, everything has to be, you know, everything has to be, yeah, limits has to be set. And my friend of
Ah,
mine, he did a corona test. This is the only thing I'm going to say about it, but he did a corona test and they gave him the result. They called him for the result, but before they gave him the result, they asked, did you went traveling in the last couple of weeks? And he
ah,
said, no, I didn't went traveling. Oh, your test is negative. And he was like, huh, what? Why does this matter? You know, like if I don't
ah.
have the virus, then why does it matter if I traveled? So my intuition says a little bit that it's more about you taking your own freedom and exploring the world while you're still in this unstable times that we're in right now. And I'm a person that's doing that, and I got a lot of backlash, especially from family. Some, not all my family, but certain parts of my family. They were like, "Yeah, why are you traveling now during this time?"
Ah.
But yeah, there's just, we're coming in a time where every step we make is a moral step. You mentioned morality earlier. Like everything we do right now, we have to talk about it ethically. Like, why are you doing it? You know. And
Ah.
technology is, I think, not a bad thing, but people are going to use it more and more unethically. I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, we've seen the trajectory of how they've been using technology. I mean, they're still uh, working on viruses and P4 grade labs to test the gain of function of a fucking virus and stuff like that. We don't
Yeah.
really need to do that, all that jazz and stuff, and things with CRISPR. That's a double-edged sword. You know, you heard about CRISPR in regards to
No,
like
no, I've
gene
not that.
editing. It could basically help a good amount of disabled people. It pretty much alters, alters one's DNA. Kind of takes out. It's kind of just like snipping out the bad part and replacing it with the good
Oh,
piece.
really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And this is such a slippery slope in regards to they could just like manufacture anything. It seems, you know.
Hmm.
The power of this is pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that they went into that depth. Oh man, my throat. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fucked up. Uh,
yeah, but it could be used for some really good things, you know. But that's always the selling point. And then up, it was either it's either going to be used for what it was intended for, which is kind of nefarious, or it got co-opted from being something benevolent into something malevolent and draconian, and just used to manipulate humanity even further, just on a whole another scale with this kind of tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with technology is people have to understand we are the true technology. In and of itself, we are the creators of the technology we see here on Earth as well.
Yeah.
We have to realize that ancestors had technology beyond our wildest imaginations as well, going back to Atlantis and what they were working with and their levels of consciousness and activated DNA strands, not just the 2 strands that we're running on, but on some 12 to 15 level shit, you know? So
yeah,
that was always the driving thing for me. It's like, you know, growing up, why do we only use, you know, like a certain amount of our brain, a certain percentage? How come there's this junk DNA they say we have? You know, what the fuck? Kind of, I felt like, you know, being born in this world is like it's a fucking ripoff, you know? Like the essential parts of our anatomy are not functioning right. What the fuck is this? You know, that does not seem normal. That does not seem natural, you know?
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's like a
crazy.
splinter in my mind, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and people's psychology is not as far as their technology themselves, you know. Sorry, I didn't say it right, but the people's psychology are not as far as the technology. So we're like having all these devices, but we are not very taught how to use them wisely. And like we use I know you use the internet pretty actively. I use it pretty actively and use it in the right way that I teach a lot. And there's still a lot of things that cannot be found anymore. I've researched, luckily,
Exactly.
But there's a lot of people, they just go for the entertainment more. And
Yeah.
hope in
That's
the
what they've been programmed for.
yeah, and I hope that and I want to start a project like this to teach people how to uh, you know, all these awareness about technology, how to be brought up into, you know, our education is very outdated. There's newer forms of education, but we need to have a way in which we can know how to validate information, how to discern, but also how to raise kids consciously in this world, make them being susceptible to autodidactism, that they can teach themselves, and that they're autonomous, that they can then make their own decisions, which ties into freedom as well. But we're getting at the end of our podcast. Is there like something you want to talk about with your new project with your podcast, because you're starting your own podcast as well, and what you hope to achieve with
Yeah, I
it,
guess.
or something else? It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically I've had my YouTube channel, AwakenYaMind, Awaken YA Mind. Um,
Yeah.
Basically building the foundation on music, and that's been such a crucial outlet and form of expression for me, just going through this whole awakening process and journey. And yeah, having that pressure release valve, which is very therapeutic at the same time as well, and pretty powerful and inspirational for not just myself but others as well.
Yeah, for
Been,
me.
yeah, sure, appreciate that. And yeah, I feel blessed
Yeah.
that it's been really well received from those from the majority who've checked it out. And but yeah, last year or two I feel like sometimes yeah, it's like I'm yelling in the wind or spinning my wheels in a sense, and just not getting the messages across effectively enough as I'd like to, you know, in regards to some of my idols, or I guess secondhand mentors, if you will, people that I, you know, follow quite a bit with their speeches, presentations, and dissertations, not just on YouTube, but wherever platform they're available. You know, it's funny, people give YouTube a bad rap when it originally it's just for people that want to yeah, share their creations, their videos, and their knowledge with other people for the majority. Of course, there's plenty of watered down subjects and infotainment and entertainment and stuff, but
Hmm.
yeah, I'm looking to advance and
So you still continue with your mixes? There's still some new mixes
yeah,
coming out.
yeah.
That's good. That's nice. Looking
Next
forward to that.
project, yeah, I just finished because the funny thing about these mixes is that I'll compile like between like 50 and 200 tracks just for a single mix, man. And to
Mm.
like narrow it down and boil it down to get something under 2 hours is not that easy sometimes. And yeah, I can have a whole new mix, just kind of split it into two. And so last mix I had is more about like thought control, pretty dark in a sense, just going into the whole negative aspect of mind control and just being programmed into confusion and things like that, and stemming from thoth, which means thought as well. And
Yeah.
I think I might make another mix more on like the positive upbeat side of things, and kind of more like empowering, I guess. Even though the last one was really empowering, I thought as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I've
Um,
listened to it once. Yeah, it was very interesting. A
yeah,
lot of material from Black Earth. I'm gonna
yeah,
definitely
for sure.
check him out like some more if I have some spare time, besides the research that I
Word.
have to do for my permaculture.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
cool.
but yeah, I'm really like grateful that you did this podcast with me, and really
Yeah, thank you
grateful
so much for
for
having me. Really appreciate it. Hell yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I'm grateful for your mixes, and sorry about the technical
Thanks, brother.
difficulties. So we'll do
Hey, me too, man. Yeah.
another podcast episode in the future, hopefully, and then we're having some better technical
Yeah.
equipment and yeah, overall better situated. But yeah, I think we did pretty good and pretty
Yeah, sounds great, brother.
yeah. So nice. And thank you, watchers, for watching, and hope you enjoyed. And bless.
In Lakesh,
In
Wesh,
luck.
Jasper, thank you so much, brother.
Yes.
Take care.
Take care, man.